across the street.
Yeah, we jaywalked. Rabbi, is jaywalking illegal?
It is illegal. I think about this a lot.
Like, is it really illegal?
So there's a concept in America. I can't remember the exact legal theory.
I've had this exact
but it's a legal theory. We did this, I think, a couple weeks ago. I gave you the speech.
I think we had this exact.
I think that's why it sparked in his mind. It's been bothering him for a few weeks, and now we'll do it again. So there's an idea.
We did talk about this.
We did talk about
I brought up New York.
The legal theory that if you were to apply every single law in America against the population as a whole, just like enforce the law, so every person would end up in jail.
Yeah,
and that we have, in other words, not only are there too many laws on the books, which is its own concept, but as a separate concept, there's a degree of reasonability in enforcement of the law in this country. And if you lose that in a society, so to speak, that's literally exactly what we're talking about today. That's amazing. If you lose that in a society, if you lose the spirit of the law, so you lose the law itself. That's actually what we're going to find in Judaism, that the final collapse of the Jewish people, says the Chachamim, says the wise men in their cryptic way, is that the rabbis themselves, actually the wisest among them, lost the spirit of the law and were too fixated on the letter of the law, one interpretation, and whatever. The whole Jewish movement in its essence was being lost, and it was only the external aspects that had remained. Welcome. Yeah.
Is jaywalking illegal in Israel or no?
I can't imagine that. In other words, it seems like one of those laws they would never create because, it's a population that could never possibly seemingly follow such laws. I don't know. That's also, by the way, a law in Judaism that you are not... I brought some over here, Brandon. Rabbis are not allowed to give a law to the community that they know that more than half the community is not going to be able to follow. So, for example, if you have a group of... If you're the rabbi of a community and this entire community is addicted to cigarettes...
And you should not smoke cigarettes.
And you want to put a ban on cigarettes, but even in a positive way, you want to do it to help them. But you know for a fact that more than half of them are literally not going to be capable of doing this, and you're going to be creating a law that half the Jews won't be able to, and now they're going to be sinning before God, heaven forbid, so the rabbis are not allowed to make such a law.
Huh. But doesn't a lot of people sin anyways, or not?
Yeah, so in other words, we're talking about the circumstance where we have a community with a rabbi in all the specific circumstances that would allow for the rabbi to make such a decision.
So is
today's Judaism, we have the cumulative understanding and decisions of the generations and how to modernly apply them today. So in other words, there's no real changes to the way the rabbis thought 2,000 years ago, so to speak. It's more just interpreting and trying to understand how they thought. But they were so wise that they were able to apply their thinking into all the circumstances. So for example, today... In other words, it'd be difficult to come up with a circumstance today where, actually, it's not true. There's an exact circumstance that happened. I made this argument in yeshiva. What happened by COVID? There are certain rabbinic communities that declared that your community has to take this vaccine. Now, I personally would not participate in any Judaism that made me... In other words, it's not Judaism to me. I'm sorry, this is not a real vaccine. This is a fake based. In other words, these people were not well informed enough about this thing to... And so I made the argument, because it was actually in the Crown Heights based-in, the Chabad based-in. Every person over the age, I think, of 55... they had to, according to Jewish law, get this experimental vaccine. And I thought this was a mistaken judgment. I'm not a ruler of the court. Welcome. But at the time, they were having this debate in my yeshiva, and I was listening to all the rabbis yell about it. And my question that I asked to interrupt them is I said, regardless of what anyone thinks about this, whether that the choice was right or wrong, is it not the case that the rabbis are not allowed to enforce, or rather dictate anything to the community they know that more than half the community won't be able to follow, and guarantee more than half the people in Crown Heights who are hearing this are not taking that vaccine just because the rabbis told them that. And so in other words, this by definition is a false based-in, which reinforces my theory that it was, how are you gonna force people to take an experimental fake vaccine? It's crazy.
So is it really called a sin? So if a rabbi, you said earlier, if a rabbi gives a law, is government
it's not
law,
that the law is invalid. It doesn't apply.
Is government law would that be considered a sin? That'd be a sin?
No. It's not a sin for the government to put a law on people.
So rabbi law, if you do
it's
something bad,
right. Rabbi law, in other words, there's two forms, so to speak, rabbi law takes. There's the strictest interpretation of what God told Moses. This is how Jews live their lives in the ceremonies, this and the other. Then there's the rabbis who come and they add certain fences to help us understand the real essence of what Moses and God were talking about. Okay. And in other words, according to Moses and God, if you look at the strict letter of the law, so I'm not allowed to eat meat with the cheese of specifically that goat's mom, or daughter rather. It has to be, you understand? If I was to be very literal in the law, it doesn't say in Torah that I cannot eat cheese and chicken. So this is instituted by the rabbis.
I could eat
The prohibition against eating meat and dairy
So
comes from the pasuk, the passage in the Chumash, in the 5 books of Moses, that says that you shall not mix, or cook rather, the meat. It says tivshel.
meat of
So there's 3 different definitions of what it can mean, but it says you shall not cook the meat of a goat in his mother's milk. Okay? So what about his aunt's milk? What about his nephew's milk?
Right, so you could
Nieces, rather.
hypothetically, you could have
Hypothetically, if we were to be very literal about this, you could have steak with
And
butter
with
as long as that
butter.
butter wasn't from the
It could
mom
be-
of
it could
the
be
steak.
goat butter, like-
or goat, exactly. Hypothetically, the rabbis instituted this is not allowed. Not just for, let's say, proper steak with other types of butter, but also with chicken and different types of cheese
Steak
at a
and
later
butter is
date,
so
and all these
good.
different things to help create a fence and help us under. So hypothetically, when Mashiach comes, we might be able to eat chicken cheese sandwiches.
That's horrible.
I mean, even now you can get the fake cheese that's almost good enough, and basically we.
No.
I said almost good enough.
Go for the real
I have a
one.
question.
Hit me, buddy.
Why
The whole
do
point of
we-
this class, specifically I
I want a
announced, is we're going to try to be much more interactive. So please feel free to, at any point, hop in, interrupt, ask questions.
do these things if they're not in the Torah?
So they are in the Torah. God and Moses had a certain. Okay, fine. I'll put it to you like this: you get married, your wife, and you have a certain understanding. Your wife takes care of the house all day. She works hard. You go to work. You make the money. Hypothetically, you come home and you take out the trash first year of the marriage every single day when you get home, because it's a good husbandly thing to do. Okay. Or rather, we'll even say because you and the wife had an actual agreement where she's going to take care of everything else, all she needs from you is taking out the trash. And this is what you agreed to with the
I like
wife,
that.
okay? Let's say you have an agreement. And for a year, you nail this agreement. You're the man, you're the mom.com. You nail this agreement, your wife loves you more than life itself. Now, when the garbage is filled and you take it out and put a new bag in, but you notice that there's some garbage on the counter, well, you didn't agree to that. So that garbage you don't put in, and your wife notices, and she doesn't get upset. It'd have been nice if he did it, but he's lazy, whatever. At least he did what we agreed to. And you get the point, yeah? So we could do this all day. Moses and God had this conversation about the agreement they were going to have with the Jewish people. And we have that baseline agreement that the Jews agree to take out the trash every day, even though God's going to take care of the kitchen, metaphorically speaking. What happens is the rabbis, or in this case, Moses and the rabbis, explain to the Jewish people, yes, God wants us to take out the trash. You realize that God could get a maid to take out the trash. It's not just about taking out the trash. It's about, do you care about taking out the trash? How do you take it, right? Could you imagine your wife saying this to you? How do you take out the trash? You know, did you care when you did it? But not just that. So in other words, please join us. In other words, God says, and the rabbis say, it's not just the fact that we're going to serve God because he told us to do it. We're going to go above and beyond to make sure that we're serving God and having this connection with God like a husband, like a wife would with a husband. That when the husband comes home and take out the trash, yes, all I agreed to was take out the trash and replace the bag, but I did notice there's a few things out and I do have an extra spare few minutes, so I'm going to do this extra bit anyway, even though my wife didn't ask. Even though God didn't ask, I'm also not going to eat the chicken with the cheese because there's a little hint there that also God doesn't really want me to do that, even though he just told me meat and cheese. See that? The rabbis aren't saying, don't eat the chicken. I mean, they're saying, literally, don't eat the chicken and cheese because you'll get confused. But what are you going to get confused about? You're going to get confused about this deeper concept that we don't really understand to begin with, of why meat and cheese can't be eaten together specifically, but that there's this relationship between us and God, and it's an important thing, and we don't want to even come close to damaging that
Was
relationship.
it really a sin to eat chicken and cheese?
Yes.
Okay.
Didn't the rabbis have to
In other words, just anything instituted by the rabbis, once it's instituted and taken upon in the Jewish liturgy and the Jewish law, so this is not in any way, shape, or form less serious. In almost every way, shape, or form, except for some ways in which we determine halacha, it's going to be more serious than the exact laws instituted by God, interestingly enough. In other words, the extra things on the counter I threw out after I took out the trash is going to be much more significant than the fact that I did the original agreement. That little extra that I did is actually the whole ikr, is actually the whole essence of what we're talking about here. And think about it in the relationship of a husband and a wife. We were saying before is that if a husband and a wife are going to have a good relationship, and let's say, just as an example, the husband's working all day, the wife is taking care of the house, husband comes home, he takes out the trash, and he puts a new bag in. That's the agreement that they have. And for the first year, they're nailing it, he's doing great. But every once in a while, there's maybe some extra trash sitting out, and he sees it, and but he didn't agree to that. That wasn't the agreement, so he leaves it, his wife does it later. What could have the husband done? What would have the wife maybe liked? If he went above and beyond it. No, he didn't need to. She's not upset. She doesn't give him a hard time about it, but he could have done that. That's what the rabbinic ordinances in Judaism are. The agreement we had between man and God is we're going to take out the trash, and we're going to put the trash in a new bag in, etc., etc., etc. And the rabbi said, yeah, but if you see extra trash sitting out, God wants you to do that too. So just throw out the... So that's what the extra rabbinical ordinances are. All right, now beginning with today's class. So I said before, we're going to try to be more interactive this class, so please feel free to jump in and ask questions at any point. But we're going to talk about the last phase of the Jewish people having our own kingdom, basically until we're going to end up in this phase that we call exile, galut, which is what we're in now. So now we're Jews. Why? We say because our mothers were Jews, our friends were Jews. We grew up in Jewish communities. For all the different reasons, yes. So for the time until Moses, really from the time that the Jews were in Egypt until now, the end of this class, so to speak, in the timeline, being a Jew would have been much more about, at least seemingly about, literally the family lineage, right? It would have been almost very Game of Thronesy in the politics of the different big families, 12 tribes, 10 in the north, 2 in the south. Everyone wants to be in charge. Everyone, maybe a little bit of greed, unfortunately, and these not so great characteristics coming into play when the Jewish people stopped serving God. And then a prophet would come and tell everyone, you're messing up, we got to serve God, that's why we're here. We're not here for the gold and riches, and the cycle would continue. So we're going to basically, in this class, examine certain phases in the cycle and reinforce the same idea that when the Jews are doing well, things go well. When we're not doing well, we repent and then things go well again. And then from these specific stories, though, we're going to try to learn some quintessential lessons about what it means to be a Jew and why we went through this to begin with and how it applies today. Justin's already half asleep. Hit me with a question, J Bones.
I don't have any questions.
No, okay, sorry. All right, no. I didn't mean to call you out like that. I'm going to try to give less speeches this class. The idea is it to be more interactive. Just called out J Bones real hard. I apologize, Justin. He was very deep in thought, actually. That's what it was, like that South Park T-shirt, right? Eric Cartman. Okay. All right. So we're going to now introduce the idea of the kingdom of Israel after King David. So we spoke last class, we ended with King David, an introduction with King Solomon, his amazing, intelligent son. King Solomon lived a very nice, wonderful reign. The Jewish people had a kingdom, and much like the most incredible come up and come down that ever happened in history, 2 incredible kings, and then Jewish kingdom into collapse. King Solomon's son was chaos. There was, I think, 8 or 9 or so kings after the time of King Solomon until the inevitable entire collapse of the Jewish kingdom and sent into our first exile in Babylon. We've heard the story of Purim. Yes, we know soon the holiday of Purim's coming up. What do we do on Purim?
Dress up.
We dress up and in the form of
Drinking.
getting hammered. Why do we get hammered?
When is this?
Celebrate.
Sure. Well, yes. What are we celebrating? On Purim. This is in a month. We've
How
got
the
some.
Jews were able to survive their
We're doing a party.
execution.
They was determined by Haman, yes, in
That's
this
what it
terrible
said.
nation with King Xerxes, this
Ooh.
monster. Exactly. That these Jews are no good. So this time period we're talking about is this class. We're talking about right after the first temple was destroyed and our first kingdom, really. We already had King David. Then immediately after King David, the kingdom splits in 2, or rather King Solomon, the king splits in 2. There's the northern kingdom and the south. How many tribes are there in Judaism?
A lot.
12 tribes, right? The top 10 tribes formed what was called then as the Kingdom of Israel, and the bottom 2 tribes formed, 2.5 tribes, Kingdom of Levi as well, formed the Kingdom of Yehuda, which inevitably, Yehuda, Jew, comes from the word Yehuda, Yehudi, a Jew.
That's my Jewish name.
So the name Yehuda?
I think so, yeah.
Very nice. So Yehuda, it was one of the 12 tribes, one of the children of Yaakov. It's King David comes from the tribe of Yehuda. The temple, the holy temple itself, sat in the territory of the tribe of Binyamin, bordering Yehuda. So the kingdom of Yehuda had the holy temple, Jerusalem, and the other 10 tribes split off into their own political kingdom, known as the Kingdom of Israel. And this was a interestingly tumultuous time in Jewish history where you could almost look at it of the spiritual base of Judaism remained in the south, and the north was like the political Jewish base, the country, political Jewish base. But these were 2 different countries, as it were. And all the troubles that inflicted the north inevitably would come to the south afterwards, yeah?
Okay, I'm just curious, and I know there are maps, the way the kingdom, the way...
How it splits?
the land.
About, you can almost split it right down the middle. Jerusalem, right around where Jerusalem, everything south of there is going to be the southern kingdom. So like the bottom, a little more than the bottom third of Israel. And then that entire northern part is going to be the northern kingdom. Everything north of Jerusalem. Okay. You have a question?
Your pictures help.
What is it?
So we have now. It's actually very, very interesting. If anyone at any point gets bored and they just any of you guys Game of Thrones fan? A little bit. Okay. Anyone here? Okay, fine. Anyone here fans of the history of Rome?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting thing to read about, right? There was the TikTok trend going around. How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Every single day.
Like 9 times a day by me. So that's not the point, though.
It's not a
It's
joke.
a legitimate, funny thing. I even laughed at it, and I'm not so big at the trends.
Yeah, it's cool.
So if you want to learn some very interesting Jewish history that's very, so to speak, similar in orientation. I mean, granted, the Jews were never like the Romans, but we had a period where our kings were not so awesome, and it was very tumultuous in Jewish history, and we would have prophets that would come. Very dramatic period of time. So this period of time we're going to talk a little bit about now, but you can learn a lot about this if you go to Chabad.org. They have very well, easily, almost like a storytelling means of kind of telling a little bit about the Jewish people in this era. But now we're going to focus on one specific story of a man whose name we hear all the time. And this is the story of Elijah the prophet. Okay? Yes. So we hear about Elijah the prophet all the time. Why do we hear about Elijah the prophet all the time? What other holidays coming up after Purim? Passover, nailed it. Who joins us at fist bump. Who joins us at every Passover Seder?
Elijah the prophet.
Comes, right? Okay.
No, we don't usually
We
do
also
that.
know Elijah the prophet comes to every single Brit Milah, every single Jewish circumcision. Okay? So he's
It's 2 at a time.
in every wedding, in every
He
Jewish
does
wedding.
something.
These are so Elijah the prophet. He likes to party. That's not the point. No, I'm just kidding. He gets to be at all the Jewish festivities. This is an amazing. You don't hear this about any other prophet. You don't hear about Moses. You don't hear about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You hear, seemingly Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Their souls can, especially for their children, come to every wedding, and presumably might be, but not about a prophet necessarily. So Elijah the prophet merits these amazing blessings, and we're going to learn a little bit about why. Yeah.
I've heard that some people.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol nu v'dvar.
Oh man. During Passover, or that's the one with Elijah's prophet, or is that not Passover? It's Passover. So I heard that people leave a seat for him sometimes.
Sure.
Is that
It's a custom. So at every Brit Milah, we leave a seat for Eliyahu Navi. Most people welcome. Most people, the custom is to fill the big cup of wine by the end of the meal.
Yeah.
Exactly. By the third cup that we drank, so we fill one up for Elijah's prophet as well. But now we're going to tell his story, and so we can learn a little bit about why is he so important in Jewish history. And the basic idea is like this. We're going to do a short version of his story, but basically, during the time of Elijah the prophet, there was a Jewish king who was, you can call him a beta male, and his wife, an alpha lady, but not in a positive way, not in like the self-empowered, awesome, strong lady who like fights in the Marine Corps or whatever. Like the woman who like abuses her husband like psychologically and is like terrible, like a really not so nice lady. Okay. But she was psychotic. She was a real psychotic lady. She was not Jewish, and I believe she's not Jewish. Okay, yeah. So the king's name was Achav, and the woman's name was Jezebel, which is one of those names that doesn't sound. So it's not a great. You'd question it if you met a Jezebel. You'd be like, "What's your story? Why'd your parents name you that?" There's something weird there. So, right? So it'd be a red flag. So Jezebel, not a great name. She was awful. And she specifically tried to get all the Jews to not serve their God, the God, right, the God of Israel, and to serve the false gods, in this case Baal, who we tell stories about this God, but basically how you serve this God in different ways, mostly maybe sacrificing your children or weird like defecation ceremonies. So it started off as like a trippy experience, and it says in the Gemara that at first these people would experience like such an intense Baal, whatever, that they would defecate themselves. And their followers, the whole experience is so like silly. These people were so nuts, and they had this false religion, and they would in other words, they would kind of like take these abstract little truths and just build it until this weird nothing of a big cult kind of like thing, to the point where they were just defecating themselves for the sake of their like it had nothing to do with the spiritual experience. They would just defecate themselves once a year, and this was their holiday. Like that's what the Gemara says about these people. So Jezebel, their leader, was awful. And she was trying to get all the Jews, and it was a very tumultuous time. You could think about it like a rags to riches story. You're poor. You think nothing of yourself. And the next day, you're like a super rich king who like everyone likes. And the temptations are awry. This is the early Jewish kingdom for the Jews. One day you're like the coolest, amazing with God, and everyone loves you, and the next day you're sinning because the temptations are very, very strong. So this back and forth would happen a lot. And this specific back and forth, there's a prophet that just can't take it anymore. His name is Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet. And it goes like this. Jezebel lady started killing off Jewish prophets in public and making a public scene out of it and trying to get rid of them all. And Elijah the prophet, so they hadn't Shemitah, which is the laws regarding the land and working the land, and every 6 years you take the 7th year off, etc. So for 70 years the Jewish people have not obeyed these laws. And it says in Chumash, it says in the book of Moses, that if the Jewish people don't follow these laws for 70 years, you're going to have 70 years of famine and death. And it had been so Jezebel and the king thought 71 years of them not following the laws of Shemitah. And they're like, see, what's up with the word of Moses? It's been like 70 years in a few days, few weeks, whatever. What's up with the book of Moses? It's not, where's our big punishment? Looks like we're good. We don't need to follow Shemitah. Yeah?
Ahab was Jewish.
Yes, the king of the northern kingdom. The king, exactly.
Okay.
His wife was not, but he was, and he was struggling, right? Struggling Yid. A lot of these Jewish kings who struggled, so a lot of them did tshuva even in their lifetimes, and they repented before God, and they helped the whole Jewish nation change. That would happen too sometimes. Most often it wouldn't, but it did happen sometimes. I don't think Achav. He might have did tshuva after this. His wife was killed. He might have actually. I think he did do tshuva after this. But the story goes like this: Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, comes before the king and the queen, Jezebel, and they threaten to kill him. And they make this statement about how clearly Moses, the book of Moses, is not so profound, and your God is not even hanging out because we're doing fine. And Elijah the prophet says something along the lines of, God was being reasonable with you and was being sympathetic with you. Now, not only will the word of Moses come true, but my word will come true, and there will be a famine in this land until I say otherwise. And he leaves. A huge famine ensues, and people start dying immensely. And now this Jezebel's not so happy with Elijah the prophet, obviously, and they start killing off Jewish prophets. And Elijah is told there was nothing he could actively do to stop the situation at the moment. He was told by God, you're going to go to a cave, you're going to learn Torah, you're going to build yourself up, and you're going to come back. And that's exactly what happens. And he comes back. And by the time he comes back, Jezebel is not happy to see him, but he approaches the king anyway, knowing full well this is a huge risk to his life. And he, in front of all the Jewish people, they have this little bro down, as it were. And Elijah the prophet says like this. He says, bring your pagan priests, 485 best Baal worshippers, bring them to the top of the mountain. And I'm going to come to the top of the mountain, and all the Jews are going to sit at the bottom. You serve your God, I'm going to serve mine. Whichever God answers, we'll let the Jews decide. How many years? 70 years, this lady and their kingdom and her parents, whatever, they've been running free for a while, feeling pretty good about themselves. They agree without second thought. And so this whole scene takes place on Mount Hermon. You can go to in Israel today. Okay, that's why this specific story is one of the stories I want to teach in this class. These are places you can go visit where the story happened. Okay. And Elijah the prophet, standing in front of the Jewish people, he screams at them and he says, my most beloved clown people, every time something goes bad, oh God, please help me. And then he helps you. Yeah. And then 5 minutes later, you're back to Baal. Okay? It's like, I can't do this all day. Time to make a choice. Baal's worshiper people are here, and I'm here. I'm the prophet of the God of Israel. Let's decide. Let's just do it now. Pick a team. It's enough already. You know, it's the back and forth that only hurts you. Pick a team. Let's do it. And the Jews were like, no, you know what? Let's see how this goes down, and etc. So Jezebel commands her priestesses or whatever it was to start doing their ceremonies, and nothing is happening. And nothing. The way the Medrash, the Jewish tradition, describes very dramatically is it got to the point where they were slashing themselves, doing all the most extreme versions of their ceremony, these prophets, because they were embarrassingly not be able to perform anything. Nothing was happening. Elijah the prophet, he's literally yelling at the Jews, look at these fools, how they're bleeding, and then look at these idiots, these are the people you follow. And the Jews are standing there, and the Jews are literally like, we messed, like they're embarrassed. They're literally embarrassed. Like we're following Moses for the amazing story, and we're following these morons who are slapping themselves and bleeding. It's awful. And finally, Elijah the prophet starts building an altar, and he does mincha. He does his afternoon, so to speak, offering, the afternoon prayer, and he surrounds this brick altar with water. So it's a flowing water brick altar, and it erupts in flames, and the whole thing, and the Jews are like, ah, Elijah the prophet, a very dramatic scene, and they charge the evil fake prophets, and they kill them all, and they kill Jezebel, and I believe they killed the king as well, or he did Tshuva, I'm not sure, but needless to say, okay, we won the day, and God won the day, and we had another period of Jewish history where, again, we were doing a little better. But then,
Who became
just
king
a few
after?
years later, it doesn't last. And again,
Who became king after?
I'm trying to see if we wrote it down here. It doesn't say. I had it before. I was reading on my phone. I should have written it down. I'm sorry. I don't think that it might not have been one. I think that was it. He might have been the final king, and Elijah the prophet led the people.
What was the original king's name?
Achav. No, I believe he was the last one, actually. I think that was it.
No.
And after, essentially, Elijah led the people himself with no king just for a couple more years. And then that's when the first temple was destroyed.
Okay.
So we were already destined for that period anyway. And now we're entering the Purim story. So now to help understand why I brought that Purim story up before, right? We're talking about this last phase of Jewish history where we are a kingdom. That was it. Elijah the prophet was that final. We had a king, okay? And now that northern kingdom is exiled to Assyria, to Babylon. The southern kingdom stays and is also exiled 150 years later. And now the entire Jewish people have been exiled to Babylon for 70 years. There's the prophet
So who exiled them?
Jeremiah. Xerxes was, so was the Babylonians. Says it's a machlekes, it's an argument who the king was specifically at the time. Sancherib in Hebrew. So who it comes to in the English king, many times in the Torah, we have a Hebrew title for a king. And this title is a very loaded word. It's the person's name. It's the definition of who the person is. In other words, like, imagine if your mailman was named Mailman. Because it literally was who he was. Like, this is Mailman. Like, that's his identity. So in Torah, oftentimes the leaders of these nations, their names are their identities. And ideally, the idea in Judaism is our names are identities in that way. But that, welcome, welcome, but very, very specifically, that the kings of nations, their names are their identities. So in Torah, what you'll have a lot of the time,
I didn't think it's in your something, but I was going to let you know.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll be back. Are you posting this?
Yeah.
I'll be back. Good to see you guys.
Yeah. I'll put it on I'll text it. Yeah, no problem. What was I saying? So we're going to have the same name in Hebrew for a non-Jewish leader, and this is actually going to be more than one real person in a chronological order. It's going to be them, it's going to be maybe their kid, and maybe a different king who came and killed them. And it's all going to be given the exact same Hebrew name without a change in title, and without even necessarily the reference to the fact that this king actually died and it's a new one. First time we see this happen is when the Jewish people are exiled in our first exile in Egypt. And Pharaoh, it says about Paro, that under Yosef, when Yosef was still alive, and so the Jewish people were treated great because Pharaoh remembered Yaakov, remembered how good Jacob was and how cool this amazing godlike man was, and that when he came to Egypt, water started sprouting everywhere and it was super trippy, and they were very nice to the Jews. But by the time Yosef passed, so Paro, the king of Egypt, forgets about the Jewish people, and Rashi asks, Rashi says comments, what does it mean forgets? That it was actually a brand new person. It was a different king, or rather, there's two opinions. One is Rashi, and one is, the two opinions are, I don't remember which one's Rashi. One opinion is that it was a literally brand new person, and the other opinion is that it was the same person that he had forgot. But the idea of, so in other words, in this case we have Sancherib is the word in Hebrew, and it's suggested that this was actually two people, one of them Xerxes. We know the name Xerxes, yeah? And the other one was Nebuchadnezzar. Is another example of a person who we understand this to be Nebuchadnezzar. It could have been multiple individuals in this role of Nebuchadnezzar, so to speak, in a very distinct period of time. And maybe there was one main, but they're all referenced, so to speak, as Nebuchadnezzar because they were his maybe apostle, his next, the leader after him or whatever. Sometimes the Torah doesn't go out of a way to give the new name of the next leader who's doing the exact same thing as the first one. They call him by the general title, which was Sancherib or Nebuchadnezzar or whatever the name is. Does that make sense? For Jewish kings, it's different. The Torah is going to name the individual person. Question.
Is it the same as on the bottom line, Roshi? Is it the same name?
No, so Rashi is one, that's different. That's a Jewish person. This is one individual. I'm saying specifically Sancherib, Nebuchadnezzar, Pharaoh, Paro, Nimrod.
Yeah.
These are names that are repeated and often used as titles to represent both individual people and the role itself.
Oh, okay.
So in other words, Paro, like it's very possible that the Paro who took the who ran into the Yam Suf, the sea, to chase the Jews. At this Paro, says the Gemara, this person did tshuva. He repented. He was actually spit out of the ocean, and he became a king of a different place, very far. There's and it still references him at different times with the new name, with the old. So Paro represents an idea more than the person, and but sometimes it's the literal person, and sometimes the person is so lost themselves or so that they are the idea, and Pharaoh is Paro, like that's literally his name because that's who this person is, right? Like it's like being a king named King.
Okay.
Like who's literally born to be king. He is king. His name is king. His name's not Michael the King. He's king. He's king.
So
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that they were speculating that it was Ramses
Mhm.
II.
So Ramses, we know even in the Egyptian was like kind of like almost like in America, there's a lot of Johns and a lot of Muhammads in lots of places in the world, right? Like Muhammad the First or Muhammad the Third. Is there a Muhammad the Third? Muhammad, is that a thing? Muhammad the Third? I don't think so.
Have you ever watched, what's the movie?
The point is that
it's like with the fake ID, and it's like.
Ask me again?
It's the
Sorry.
second most
Oh,
famous
Ramses.
right. So Ramses was a title.
Okay.
And a name. It was both. There was a person named Ramses. Oftentimes, what happens in other cultures is that you'll have a person with a very important name, and that becomes a title after they pass because it was such a relevant person. It's almost like calling someone a Washington today. It doesn't, or calling someone a Kennedy is much more relevant. The name becomes like a title. So Ramses was a person, a very prominent leader. I think he was one of the pharaohs, and then it became literally a title in Egypt. So even in the secular books, there's going to be a lot. There's Ramses the First and the Third and the this and the that. In the Jewish understanding, we don't title them 1 through 9. There was at one point we understand a person named Ramses, and we understand that separately Ramses is a title, and sometimes it's both, sometimes it's not.
Like Caesar?
Kind of, but Caesar would be like in other words, there was never a person named Caesar. Caesar was the title. The title, it's like Caesar's more like the title of emperor. So, in other words, exactly like that, but there was never a Caesar named Caesar. There was a Paro named Paro. There was a Paro called Paro by Tyre. It doesn't mean his name was Paro, it means his identity was that's how you would define a Caesar, I guess. So yes, Caesar, that's really what an emperor, that's what the emperor is, by the way. In general, in Judaism, that's the concept of a king, an emperor, is that the role is more significant than the person, and they do, so to speak, lose themselves regardless of who they were before, and they are given this new name. Like whoever
Not Judaism, but Caesar's not his name. So like
Is that actually not his
the
name?
title.
No, Caesar was a name given
That's what
afterwards.
it was
Julius,
called.
his name was Julius Augustus. First of all, he was born with. Caesar came in, it's a title. It was added to his name. It's not his birth name.
Oh,
and it was
okay.
invented by the first Caesar. Caesar means emperor. Caesar, Augustus Caesar, the first emperor.
Yeah.
He gave himself this title. And so Caesar it was also like a half
It
godlike
was this
person.
thing that got passed.
So it was almost like, so when you became
Okay.
the Caesar, you're now like the godlike person.
So you
get
got
all
the
those-
name. You got the name added.
It
You
wasn't.
Okay.
It was not Julius
Okay.
Caesar's name before he announced himself
Okay.
Caesar. All the other Caesars who came afterwards, they changed their name when they became the leader.
Yeah,
He used
like
to just be
W-
Elijah.
No, it'd be more like changing their last name. They would get rid of. First of all, a lot of them would change their whole
Oh, so
names.
he would change.
They would
okay.
change their actual.
That it would be
it'd
Julius
be like changing.
Caesar
It'd be
instead
like.
of Julius Augustus.
What's your last
Okay.
name in English?
Sajevitz.
So it'd literally be like you getting married and changing not to like Justin Sajevitz the Wise. It'd be Justin the Wise.
I like that. The
You
wise.
see, in other words, it wouldn't be
That's a good
Sajewitz the Wise, it'd be the Wise instead of Sajewitz.
That's- I like
Caesar
that.
became,
I like that.
but also in the Roman tradition, they would have like fine names. So even if his name was Julius Caesar, or wasn't, he had 5 names: Julius Augustus, Caesar, and
Yeah.
they just called him in short, or we called him in short. First of all, they didn't even call him Julius, and no one ever called him Julius a day in his life. That was not the name they called him by. Whatever I forgot his birth name. That's what they called him. Gaius. That's exactly correct. Gaius. Did you also listen to the History of Your Own podcast? Sorry. But I was doing all those drives. History of Your Own podcast. Okay. Continuing. So we did Elijah the prophet story. And get this general idea. Now we're moving on to Nebuchadnezzar. Talking about now Purim story. Jews in exile. Still a nation. The first exile is different than the second. What's different than the second exile? We're in every nation in the world now. I can go meet a Jew in Australia, I can meet a Jew anywhere, and for the last 2,000 years it's been the case. The first exile is not the case. We had a kingdom. Our kingdom was exiled, but we stayed together and pocketed there. And then we went back to the kingdom, and then the second exile is like it is today. So now we're talking about that first pocket exile in this place called Babylon. So we're still exiled, but all the Jews are still together. Hit me.
With the North and the South kingdom,
Not literally.
were there Jews in other places or only in Israel?
So imagine like any society, millions of people in it. Every 12th cousin, heaven forbid, is like, I can't stand these Jew people. I'm going to go be an Egyptian. Heaven forbid. Presumably it happened once in a while, not very often. In other words, people had that right? You can imagine it happened, but no, in general, there was 10 tribes, right? There was 2 of the, and it was also, they wouldn't intermarry with each other so often. There had to be, at certain points, there were laws that you weren't allowed to marry into other tribes. It would be different conflicts.
Isn't that 10x? Never mind.
No. Not that. So it was not a race thing. Tribal would have been. I mean,
No.
no, it can't
No,
be.
it's more
Don't the
of a,
family trees like that?
yeah, they kind of mix up. Yeah, the family.
And right at the beginning, it was brother married sister. Had to be. So the question becomes, in Jewish law, it's completely forbidden. So how could the entire? It's interesting. There's many things in Jewish law. Okay, here's an example. Honey is something that is very difficult to become unkosher. It itself is kosher. Nothing mixes with it.
Yeah.
You can very easily remove something that falls into it. It's very difficult to make a whole thing of honey unkosher. So it's kind of like the kosherest thing. Okay, honey comes from bees, which is like the epitome of the unkosherest thing. A bug is the epitome of an unkosherest thing. If a full bee gets lost in my cup of coffee, and someone takes that cup of coffee and spills it anywhere, and I don't find that bee, it doesn't matter what food that lands on. Everything is unkosher. If it falls on one steak, in a steakhouse of 1,000,000 steaks, and I don't know which steak got hit by the bug, and I can't find the bug, and the bug might be somewhere in one of these steaks, every steak in that house is unkosher. If cheese falls on it, throw out the steak. Who cares? Anything else? Bug?
So if a bug
Bugs.
touches-
So in other words, from the most unkosher thing comes the most kosher thing. Okay? The Messiah himself comes from the relationship we understand that was between father and daughter. It's a forbidden relationship. And why did they do this? They only did it because they thought there were the last 2 people left in the world. They literally thought there was no one left. All of humanity was going to come through them like it did from Noach and his family. And they thought, so that's it. They had to be with their father. There was no other choice. Only after, when they were already pregnant, did they realize that wasn't the case. Mashiach himself comes from this relationship.
The Moabites.
Yeah, and with so in other words, what's the relevance of, so there's an idea from this, that from the unholiness, the greatest sparks of holiness, so to speak, from the unfortunate circumstances, it's the greatest goodness that can actually be brought out, which is really the essence of all of exile to begin with. It's why do we go through this pain and suffering to begin with? On the one hand, we get the common answer, which is that all the pain is for a good reason, and that's true. But it has to be more than that, right? In other words, like, I go to the gym, and the first 3 weeks it sucks, and I get sore every single time, and then after a while I stop getting sore. So a person can very easily ask themselves, why do I need to get sore to begin with? I understand the concept, whatever. Why not just make people who are genetically better, God? And that way they just never get sore, even though they understand that getting sore is like a valuable thing. Like, they don't need to be, it's not actually an essential part of reality that I get sore when I go to the gym. It's not.
It tears the muscle.
It's not. But okay, but I don't have to feel that pain. In other words, but I don't have to feel that pain. It could be that that's purely a pleasurable thing to me. I know it's a good thing. It could be, in other words, 6 months in, maybe it is a pleasurable thing. It could have been the whole time it was, but God made it in such a way where at first it's not. So even the pain of everyday life that in other words, it's a good answer, but it's not really a full enough answer. The truth has to be that there's something good happening in this horrible, crazy place that is so good that it rationalizes all this craziness.
Okay.
Because otherwise, you see what I'm saying? It can't be, in other words, you know something like this? It can't be, it's not reciprocal. What do they call it when, collective punishment. It can't be, whatever you struck me, I'm striking you back. It's not.
Have fun.
You mean Hammurabi's code?
No. That's correct. That's not what I was referencing. No, meaning to say, regarding Israel and Gaza, they were saying proportionate response.
Okay.
It's not proportionate response. It can't be that this evil, we can think about how evil is in the world and how much it can't just be that the good thing that's going to happen is going to be just as good, and now we've evened it out. It can't be just proportional. It has to be that the good is so much greater than this other, because otherwise it wouldn't rationalize it. No one would say, like, truly, I had this horrible traumatic experience, but they paid me $5 million cash, so it all worked out. You live with that trauma. Even if in the moment it's not actually, even if it feels even and you think it's even, you're ultimately not even because you're messed up from that trauma. Only a complete, and the trauma's been fixed, and I don't even have the memory anymore, and a total, and cash, and, would actually, what would rationalize, heaven forbid? Nothing really does, except something so good that it can rationalize. So that has to be the truth. It has to be the Mashiach, this thing we're talking about, this Judaism we're talking about. The thing we're waiting for is so good that it rationalizes this unfortunate concurrent series of events. And we're talking about some of these events now. So Purim, okay? Horrible series of events. All the Jews are there. We're like, we're all going to die. Okay, we're all upset. And some of us are like, oh, it's our fault, right? We're exiled. So they're very depressed. But that's not Jewish. In other words, okay, you're depressed, you did the wrong thing, but you're alive. Do tshuva, you go right back to Israel. That's the Jewish idea. It's very difficult for people they're traumatized, right? We just got kicked out of the land. So all these different inyanim, these ideas are happening within the hearts and the minds of the Jewish people. And again, we have leadership, we have the rabbis at the time, but this time we had an amazing Jewish female leader, undisclosed, hidden, and through immensely terrible circumstances became revealed. So we call it the Book of Esther, the Purim story. Why is it called the Book of Esther? The main character is Mordechai, it would seem. This prophet man, and there's all these other prophets, and he's fighting the big mad king, and they do a whole situation to save the Jews. And yes, Esther is a huge part of the story, but why not Esther and Mordechai? He's also, it's called Megillus Esther, because her story is the essence of the whole story for every Jew, okay? And it goes like this. Esther was a, you might call, beautiful, innocent yeshiva girl. She was raised by Mordechai because her parents had passed. She was orphaned. So she was raised by like one of the greatest men in the history of humankind. So she was raised perfectly. So she had no evil thoughts, no evil inclinations. She just wanted to be a good person. Very sweet, normal, decent, but very profound person, but normal, healthy, good. Okay. But I mean, you might even say simple and will. Not interested in the big this and that, whatever. She's a Jew. She's a good Jew. She wants to be like her matriarchs. And there's this horrible threat of the Jewish people, on the Jewish people rather. And her and Mordechai came up with a plan. Basically, this terrible man Haman was like, for years he was plotting to kill the Jews, trying to manipulate the king into finally, because he knew the king actually liked the Jews. He had no issue with the Jews. He already took their kingdom, and then he kept them all alive, and he actually makes a lot of money from them. And now he's got great doctors and lawyers. He actually really didn't have such a problem with the Jews. I heard a great joke this week. Jewish mother. So she says, so he says, he's a good boy, he's a smart boy, so he becomes a doctor. So he's a little slower, so he'll be a lawyer. So he's even slower, all right, so he'll be an accountant. So he's meshuggah, he's crazy, and he'll be a rabbi. Little self-deprecating humor for the crowd, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Esther. So what happened in the Esther story? Basically like this. The Jews are being put to death. Mordechai and Esther come up with a plan. They understand Haman got into the king's head. So the only way to reverse the plan is get back into the king's head. The king is not only, he's stubborn, he was manipulated over years to convince him to now get him unconvinced of this whole thing that Haman got into his head about the evil Jews. It's like trying to convince Hitler that the Jews aren't so bad. Like, what just happened? And when Hitler was a decent guy at 30, let's just say, in this metaphor, which Hitler was not. But meaning a normal guy who all of a sudden is now on he has blood rampages all over the world. But he was fine with the Jews, and now he's back on the Jews. So the plan between Esther and Mordechai is like this. There happened to have been a story at the beginning of the Purim story that seems completely random, in retrospect, not random, where the king gets hammered. He wants to brag about how pretty his wife is. He calls his servants and says, hey, bring out my wife. Tell her to just come out in her crown. So she's not wearing any clothes. She's like, that's undignified, and refuses, and he kills her. Right? He's hammered, and he's like, not cool. It was a whole argument. Haman was like these ladies. So you know what Haman said? He says, women's rights. See what they're doing here? She's trying to start a women's rights movement. You gotta cinch this in the bud. That's what Haman said. That's not what I'm saying. That's what Haman said. And so he killed his wife, and he woke up the next morning, the king, and he's depressed. He's like, where's my wife? Okay, that's really how it went. Okay, so you understand the type of person we're dealing with. Who, you know what I'm saying? This is who, so to speak, holds the fate of the Jews in his hands, this guy. And so Mordechai and Esther are like, you're going to deal with such a person, like, this is nuts. Like, what do we do? Okay. So in other words, they understood it's nothing to do with this guy. This guy's a pawn in God's scheme, and whatever God wants is what this guy's going to do, and he doesn't even know what's happening to this guy. He's a lunatic. So Mordechai and Esther, they obviously, the Jews don't understand this, but Esther understands this. And so they come up with basically what happens. So the king wants a new wife, and he calls that all the prettiest women in town should be brought so he can pick a new wife. And Mordechai and Esther had a plan that Esther will be one of the women, and hopefully the king will choose her, and she will, as the king's wife, convince the king to be nice to the Jews. What's the problem with this plan? Okay, Esther is a beautiful, beautiful woman. There's hundreds of them. She's a Jew. She doesn't come from the big family. She's not known. Whatever, all the different things. And not only that, Esther understood that really her beauty is not going to have anything to do with it. This is the Jewish people's opportunity to do tshuva. And as of now, we're all getting executed and exiled, and in exile we're about to get executed. Says God, we need to do tshuva. So Esther tells Mordechai, I will agree to go meet the king on one condition. I'm going to fast for 3 days, and all the Jewish people have to fast for 3 days. And pray to God for 3 whole days and not eat. And if they do that, I will go meet the king, says Esther. That's why it's called Megillah Esther. That's why it's the story of Esther.
So did she, maybe I misread the story. So did she have a choice? I mean, did she, when her uncle chose her to be one of the candidates to replace the other king, the queen, did she have a choice? I mean, did she?
Yeah, she could have said no. She's a human being. She has free will. Why not? Yeah. No, it was an incredibly dangerous thing. The king kills the last wife he doesn't like. He kills anyone he doesn't like. What do you mean? She could have said, this is nuts. I'm not doing that. That's insane. That's a young Jewish girl who's never been married. She's going to go try to marry the crazy king Xerxes to save the Jews. This is a nuts story. So she agrees to do it on one condition. Jews, I'm going to fast for 3 days, and all the Jews are to fast for 3 days. We got to repent before God, or it's just not going to work. They agree. Esther goes before the king, and the king chooses her. Now, interestingly enough, on that day, right, she had fasted for 3 days. She didn't put on her makeup. She didn't look, and still she was chosen. Even more, to emphasize the point, it had nothing to do with the way she was going to look. This story was for the Jewish people to return to God. That was the purpose of all of it. And Esther understood that, and she had to, so the Jews had to understand, okay? So, lo and behold, this whole experience inspired the Jewish people. Haman ends up getting killed in beautiful fashion. Mordecai and Ezra end up leading the Jewish people out of this, with a man named Ezra, out of that stage into the stage of Ezra, the prophet, Ezra the scribe, as he's known, who then took the Jewish people back to the state of Israel. Okay? So, we're going to now talk quickly, because I know we're getting, we're going to really quickly talk about this last little section of period of time, after returning after Babylon. Basically, this is the last era of Jewish history before we're in the history of today. And then all the last 3 classes are going to be referencing arguments about Israel, Palestine, and this, that, and the other. What do we have now before we get into those types of things? We have some Jewish spiritual understanding. We have Jewish historical understanding. Both we've seen what we can prove even in secular history, like the existence of a Assyrian king called Nebuchadnezzar, or specific individual characters who maybe in Judaism there's a few of them, but we see there's definitely parallels, even if we can't perfectly align them. Ramses, these different things. And we have then the more detailed Jewish tradition that in the same way as other history books do that document our own history. We know sometimes it's allegory, sometimes it's pure history, like the story of Elijah the prophet that we told. That is a historical story. That is the way it both spiritually, but that's also literally what happens. So many of these stories as well. So we have a greater now context, this place called Israel. That's not a place that we've just been worried about for 50 years. Turns out that if you go to this place called Hebron, right, which is one of the major, where there's a lot of conflict. It's a 98% Arab population with about 5,000 Jews. So who's buried in Hebron? Well, you've heard of Abraham, right? Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Rachel's not buried there. You can also go to her cave, but these are people who you can, 4,000-year-old, 3,700-year-old people, 3,800, you can go see where they're buried. So it's not just this crazy, so you go to Israel and you're standing there. So now we're getting that. And then we're going to go to more modern history after this class. But we're going to do this last little section now, because the Greeks is a really important thing to talk about, because it's very relevant to what we're talking about right now, the Romans and the Greeks. And then, all right, fine. So I'm just going to jump on this final story, and then we're going to Q&A, end class, etc. But this is a very important story, okay? This is what the Gemara says is the story that epitomizes the collapse. This was the final story of why the Jewish people were kicked out of their second temple and sent in to this last exile. The story goes like this. There's a man named Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Bar meaning the son of, but it's not made so clear necessarily. Bar in Aramaic is going to be like Ben in Hebrew, okay? But there's a man named Kamsa, there's a man named Bar Kamsa, and there's a third random guy, we don't know his name. Random guy throws party, l'chaim. Throws a big party, invites all the homies, finds out Kamsa's in town. Tells his bartender, he says, yo, Kamsa's in town. I need you to get him. Can't have a party without Kamsa. He says, absolutely, I'll go get Kamsa. Runs around the town. No, Kamsa, we got a Kamsa. I need a Kamsa. My name's Bar Kamsa. Found the wrong guy. Didn't realize it. Brings Bar Kamsa to the party. tells Bar Kamsa, yeah, you were invited. This guy really needs you at the party. He's so excited. Bar Kamsa knows this guy hates him. He's inviting me to his party. Maybe he wants to make up. Bar Kamsa comes to the party. When he gets there, random guy sees Bar Kamsa. That's Bar Kamsa, not Kamsa. And it's okay. And he loses it. He says, no, get out. You're not my friend. Get out of here. I don't want you here. He says, get out. I come all the way here. Let me pay for my food. I'll eat my food quietly. I'll get out. No, you don't have to embarrass me. No, I don't want you to eat my food. Get out of my house. So I'll pay for half the party. All right? I came all the way here. I'll give half the party. Let me stay. Don't embarrass me. And then I can leave. No. He hates this guy. He won't even. I'll pay for the whole party. He says, no. And he makes him leave. He's offered to pay for the whole party. And Bar Kamsa was so upset, so angry, that there was rabbis even at this party who allowed this to happen, didn't say anything. He says, that's the last straw. I'm done with these Jews. And he became the spy who went to the Roman emperor, to the Caesar, and told him that the Jewish people will not offer a calf that was given by the emperor because they're treasonous against the Roman Empire. He lied, in other words, so he created a situation where the Roman Empire sent over a blemished calf that they're not allowed to offer to God. And then the rabbis have an argument. If we don't offer this to God, the Romans are going to think we're rebelling against them. They're going to kill us all. If we offer it to God, we're going against the God of Israel and we're offering a blemished a sacrifice. We can't do this. So they were in quite the pickle. One sage says, can't we just kill this guy? He's the one who started this whole thing. What if we kill him and the whole thing goes away? Another sage says, can't we, for the sake of the entire nation of Israel, blah, 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 one time offer this calf? Wouldn't that be within the law? And a third sage, he says, want to get it right? Sorry. What did he say? He basically said that he doesn't know which decision's correct. He doesn't know which one to answer. He says they both could be correct. And the Gemara records that it's because of that third sage that all of Israel fell. Now this is a strange story. Okay? First we get the first part, in other words, if you hear the story that Israel fell because of how terribly the poor Jew was treated, and he was kicked out, and then he got upset, and he ratted on the Jews, that's like it doesn't make us feel any better, but at least the story is like, okay, that's why the Jews got kicked out of the land. We weren't being nice to our own brothers. But it says in the same Gemara, the reason that we were inevitably kicked out of the land is because of that third rabbi who couldn't decide what to do at the end, whether we should kill this guy or whether we should sacrifice the lamb anyway. And because of the indecisiveness, that's the reason why we were kicked out of the land. So this is a very confusing story. I'm going to give now, with God's help, a little chassidus, a little Panimis Satira, a little secrets of the Torah here. And then we're going to end the class. And if you have any questions we could ask, if not, you guys can leave. Thank you so much. But it goes like this. When the spies... Okay, it's actually really trippy, so I really hope you guys enjoy this because things like this really blow my mind about Torah. This is a very real thing. When the spies were sent by Moses to traverse the land of Israel, okay, same land we're talking about, the spies encountered Nephilim, the children of the Nephilim. What are the Nephilim?
Angels?
Giants. Nephilim is a type of angel, but their children, yes, they're giants. Nephilim is correct. That's a type of angel. So their children are often called Nephilim. They were like demigod people. So giants, if a non-Jewish person ever tells you that there's no such thing as giants and these Christians are crazy, tell them the Christians are not crazy. They stole it from the Jews. And there were absolutely things called giants. They were the demigod, they were the children of fallen angels, as it were. It says in the Medrash, there was an argument with angels and God, and the angel said to God, look at these Jews, they're terrible. Why do you even bother with this world? And God says, you think you could do better? He says to the angels, the angel says, of course we can. We're angels, we're perfect. He says, go give it a try. So the angels come down here, and they're like at the strip club right away. They chashon, but they don't last 2 seconds. They immediately failed everything, and they were very, very powerful, and their children became the biggest monsters the world had ever seen. The giants that we see, hear about in prayers, all the worst people came from these. Okay, so in the Jewish tradition, we understand this is real. All right, but okay? Yeah.
How tall were the giants?
10 feet, you would say. Well, probably 15 feet. 15 feet, probably. Probably 2.5 times roughly the size of a man. 15 feet, probably. Yeah. They would have been big. I mean, yeah, ridiculous. Maybe even bigger, some of them. Also, human beings, relative to Noah's time, when the flood happened, pre-flood, much larger.
How tall?
Probably average. Like a short person would have been 6 feet, and a tall person maybe probably like 9.5. I don't know. It's probably like a whole different... Pre-flood, we were much bigger, stronger physically, totally different type of person. The flood weakened humanity to the point where we could become spiritual anyway. Before the flood, we couldn't be spiritual. We were too, very strong. Imagine every person is a Greek god type person, so there's way too into ourselves, way too into physicality. There was no opportunity to be in spirituality. We became weakened through the flood, metaphorically and literally. Okay, but when the spies encountered these giants, again, the spies are sent by Moses. They're sending a mission from God. We understand the secret of the story of the spies, that really they had a part of themselves. They were too afraid to encounter this. They wanted to stay in the desert where it'd be easier, where they could hang out and learn about Torah all day and not have to actually fight and live in reality and fight these things that God wanted them to fight. Moses knew that was their mission. God knew that was their mission. They didn't want to do it. What word does the Torah describe these spies at? It calls them grasshoppers. They felt like grasshoppers in the eyes of themselves when they faced the giants. They were so afraid. They were insecure. And the word is used as grasshoppers. In Hebrew, the word is pachagavim. Okay, points out the Maharal, one of the great sages of the 15th century. It's about 500 years ago. What is the word in Aramaic for grasshopper? Kamsa. That the story of Bar Kamsa and Kamsa is the story of the grasshopper, of the Jew who feels like the grasshopper. That the entire story of the Jewish people getting kicked out of the land of Israel for the final time, and the final straw that broke the camel's back, was the essence of that is Kamsa. What is Kamsa? Our own Kuf, I believe. Kamsa in Aramaic? I'm not sure. Kuf. No, with a Kuf, Kamsa. Kuf, Mem, Nun, Tzadik. Hey, I'm assuming. That Kamsa, okay, that the Jew felt like in their own mission with God, we felt like that spy facing down the giant. Overall, we were not confident in our own overall mission in life and our purpose in being in the land of Israel to begin with. That insecurity, in other words, it was our confidence in fulfilling God's mission that brought us success the entire time. That was what kept us fueling. The memory of Moshe taking us through the desert and the inspiration of the prophets and all our ability and will and desire, and that after time and time we've just gotten broken down, where we felt spiritually, so to speak, psychologically, like grasshoppers, even in our own missions and serving God, and that's why inevitably we were kicked out of the land. That the land itself spit the Jewish person out. That a Jewish person, to function in a healthy manner, especially in the land of Israel, of course, obviously, would be, in only the healthiest way, prideful and exuberant and energetic and happy about serving God. And if anything else is felt, any negative feelings are felt while serving God, so the land itself ultimately is going to spit you out. So, that is how we conclude the first half of the My Israel course, that spiritually speaking, and apparently literally even physically, we don't have to, okay, but that where all these spiritual ideas, they manifested themselves physically in a delay, so we don't see it as like that literal, but it is literal, that the land of Israel is a place where the Jewish person exists to serve God and be a light unto the nations. And when we do that, we had a very healthy, happy kingdom and everything was going great. And when we didn't, and ultimately at the end, when we were so insecure about our mission that we felt like grasshoppers in our own eyes, that we felt like Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, and then at that point we were spit out of the land, not as a punishment, right? Not because God hates us, it's because we, from our own selves, from our own place, we have to find the place within ourselves where we feel prideful to be Jews, where we feel prideful in our mission of serving God in this world, and then we'll be fit, suitable candidate, so to speak, to live and exist in the land of Israel. So we should see that now. With God's help, I want to share, if we will, one last little sheet of paper thingy, and then everyone go about their way. But this is very quick. As you all mentioned, my printer was running out of black ink, but my color still had some left, so I printed this in red. But a quick little aphorism of the Baal Shem Tov with God's help.
Smart.
And then we will go about our way.
Ambitious with the numbers.
Truth is, I printed the first one out on black. I was like, maybe the ink, you know, it's like when you have a pen that doesn't work for a week and you put it aside and you go to use it again. So I was like, maybe it'll work again. I printed out one in black and like nothing came out. And then after I saw in the thing, it said color. Like I was like, all right, I'll try, green or red. Baruch Hashem. Next time I'll do green blenator.
You just matched it to the tablecloth in advance.
I didn't even realize, but the truth is that red subconsciously I go to this type of red. It's like the FSU red, you know. It's like, okay. All right. So this is, like we said before, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. He did not write his own books, but there are 3 books that are written in his name of collections of his teachings. One of them is called Keser Shem Tov, the crown of the good name, and we will read that now. One of the teachings from this book. In the teachings of the fathers, we learn the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. The teaching of the fathers, the ethics of our fathers, is from the Mishnah, yes? Min Pirkei Avos. Lessons of Our Fathers. This is a fundamental book of how to be a mensch, basically, and it's a fundamental book of Jewish teaching. So in this book, it says the reward of a mitzvah, the reward of one of the commandments by God, is the commandment itself. What does this mean? Seems a little. Could you imagine, like someone, like, what's my reward of being your friend? My company, like. So in other words, so it's a strange statement. Yeah. The reward of the person thinks the reward of a mitzvah. Are we told long life? Happiness, children, health, world to come. Lots of great rewards for mitzvah. Connection, infinite connection with God. So the reward of putting on tefillin is that you got the chance to put on tefillin. Now, don't ask me for anything else. That'd be weird. That's not what we're saying. So the teachings and ethics of our fathers, there's a line, and it says the reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah. So what does this really mean? So it means that there is no greater reward than the delight a person can get out of doing a mitzvah happily. The delight of a happy mitzvah is so great that even if there were no other reward to come beyond it, this would be enough. So the Baal Shem Tov is talking about if a person could experience God's delight, which they will in the world to come. The person will within themselves, the pleasure that God has when a person joyfully does a mitzvah. So this delight, you would never want anything else. And yet, in truth, even in addition to this delight, there is also an unlimited reward yet to come for any mitzvah that a person's done b'simcha, a person's done with joy. Thank you all so much. Wow, I did go a little over an hour again, but we tried it. We're really off the clap. That's good. Thank you guys so much. Any questions?
I have a question
Please.
about if, like, let's say we're sitting outside in the sukkah, and then a fly lands on your food. Is it not kosher anymore?
Very good question. Basically, here's how it goes. So there's in Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, there's a section called taruvos. It means mixtures. And this question is asked: what happens to something unkosher comes into something kosher? Yeah. So in this case, with a fly, very simple. The fly situation is very significant. It has chashuvos if the fly is whole. If the fly loses a wing or a leg and then gets lost in your food, it's no longer the same situation, and it's basically like something just gross came into your food. In general, just take it out of the food. Now on Shabbos, there's a restriction on Shabbat of not removing. You can't sift. Sifting, like you sift like flour and stuff to get. So sifting is one of the restrictions. One of the things you do in the temple. So Shabbos you can't sift. So what's sifting? So taking something bad out of something good. So if you have a salad and you don't like the nuts, so in Shabbos you're not supposed to take out the nuts. No, you eat around it. You eat around it. But what about soup? Can I tell you? This is the one question I got wrong on my rabbi exam. It's amazing. So I was sitting for my rabbi exam. We had 2 tests in one day. I became a rabbi, thank Hashem, with 5 other of my very close friends. And we had a situation where usually we'd have to travel 3 hours for the tests. We worked it out so he would come all the way to us, Baruch Hashem, but only we were going to do 2 tests in one day, on my suggestion. And I was the only one who was actually ready to take both tests on that day, on the final rabbi exam. And so taruvos, mixtures, was the first test, and the second was Shabbos to end and get our final certification. And for the Shabbat test, so I was the only one taking the test that day. So instead of normally you get the rabbi exam, you're going to get 50 questions, but it's split between 6 people. So you don't get 50, you get 8. So now there's 5 other people watching me get 50 questions, and as I'm trying to, And the one question I got wrong is the rabbi asked me, and I still don't remember reading this, and I still haven't found it in Shulchan Aruch. It's a custom, but I still haven't found it in the Sefer. What happens if a fly, this is what the rabbi asked me, falls into my soup on Shabbat? I can't take anything bad out of my soup. So, funny enough, when I was sitting there, I was so embarrassed. I was like, Rabbi G, I have absolutely no idea. And my very close friend, he's so excited. He was religious from birth. I'm not religious from birth. And he's like, oh my God, I know the answer. He says, you take the spoon and you make sure there's more soup than there is fly. And that way you're not removing the fly, you're removing the soup, and there's a fly in the soup. And then, very good, that's the correct answer. So if I remove and I'm sitting there, and I'm like so embarrassed. I'm like, nobody ever taught. I was like freaking out. And I realized, stopped in the moment, and I was like, and I'm not trying to brag, I was sitting with 5 other people who were all born religious, and I was the only one who was not. And the only question that anyone there was even capable of answering was the one question he knew. Why? Because he knew that from when he was 13 years old, that a fly fell into his soup because he grew up religious. I didn't grow up religious. So the only answer I didn't know was the answer I didn't see in a book, because it was probably a custom that's not in the book, and it's something his father taught him. And that was the answer. So, in other words, my wrong answer was a little moment of pride, like, how do I have all the other answers? Baruch Shem Blanhara. It was
Did you just say you don't eat the soup?
You're gonna waste all the soup on Shabbos? Chas v'shalom. So first of all, wasting is of course a sin. You're not allowed to just waste. But
So you're
no, but so legitimately, what if you have like a delicious chicken soup that you're super excited for and a fly falls into it?
Yeah,
What would
like-
you do? So there's an answer. What about wine?
Drink
What if you
it.
have a $700 bottle of wine? Someone pops
Ah,
it open,
don't
they fill
do
you up for a
that.
cup, and a fly in front of your eyes. You see the fly land in it. That's the whole thing. That you're not going to try to take the fly out. On Shabbos, you could. You would have to remove more wine than fly.
Like you're wasting the wine.
Saving the rest of the wine. You're saving the rest of the wine.
You're gonna be
Eating
hammered
that
at the end of the
fly,
night, so that don't think
Heaven
it
forbid the
matters.
punishment that would comes upon a person al pi Torah if they consciously in front of other Jews. I'm eating the fly, like and in front of.
What if you
Just
drink
nasty.
the
Why
fly?
would you do that? I mean, for a
What's so
person
wrong
these days,
with
probably very little. But back in the day, what would be so wrong with it? So, physically, to your body, what's so wrong with it? It's high in protein.
It's
High in
much
shown.
protein, yeah.
Spiritually, what's wrong with it? I'll put it to you like this. Okay, I'll put it to you like this. Any engineers? Physicists? All right, fine. I won't put it like that. I'll try a different one. Okay, fine. Anyone ever worked in a restaurant? You know those ovens or deep fryers that require a different plug, not like a regular plug, because 100 volts won't where it needs like the 150. Okay, take the 150 plug and shove it in the wrong one. Tell me what happens. That's like you eating fly. You're plugging in something into you that does not belong there. And it's, in other words, for your body, it might be fine. For your soul, it's like plugging in 7 trippy weird watts into like a 50 watt system that just doesn't need that. It's not. It's gonna just mess it up for no reason.
Yeah.
Is the
So
idea.
you're just dipping the fly out of the soup with a spoon.
You have to well, you have to make sure there's more soup in this actual spoon
How would
with
you
the
measure
fly.
that? How would you measure that out? Like really?
So, but right, literally more
just
than
saying.
51%. No, with your eye you could do it. With your eye, 51%. You could see if it's a
What's
tiny.
the bigger fly? No, Josh.
You might be in trouble. No, yeah.
Have you watched Ari Shafir's comedy special? Jew.
I don't think so.
There's
I've seen maybe a few clips.
There's a whole bit about
The fly in the soup.
Not fly, but like it's like if someone puts a piece of ham in a soup, like how to make it kosher.
Right.
ham. It's-
So,
it's like that
But you
same
could, if someone puts
concept.
ham in your soup, to make it kosher.
I'll show you the bit on the way home.
Okay.
You should watch it. It's really funny. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, the first person that someone learns when they start learning Jewish law regarding kashrus, regarding kosher, is that most things you hear about kosher, like growing up, especially if you didn't grow up religious, is just not true. Like, for example, it's kosher. I get non-pork on my pizza. I just get cheese pizza at the place, so it's kosher. That's absurd. No, it's the farthest thing from the truth. Fish, any fish purchased at a store, unless it's cut by, meaning in general, we don't even assume to check, because fish are usually cut by standard knives, and most places that, let's say, do salmon, just do salmon, so they wouldn't have unkosher fish too. So, in other words, a kosher, any fish you buy at the store that's not cooked, you can buy, and you can cook it at home, and it's kosher, if it's a fish with scales and fins. Any restaurants with, like any vegan place, right? So a person, so it's kosher. No, none of that works.
That's what I asked.
Yeah.
So why is it? I completely forgot. Why can't you eat like fish that has catfish? Why can't you eat that?
Because they're gross.
No, so for fish, it's simply.
They're like dirty.
Thank you so much for coming.
That's what it comes
I mean, like also like sailfish, like. Other
No, so for
like
fish,
that.
it's scales and fins.
Yeah.
If you're gonna ask me on a specific fish, I literally am I grew up in Florida my whole life. Don't like fish. Don't know about fish. Don't like the ocean. I'm terrified of it.
You live
I'm
in
not
Florida. You don't
my
know
whole
anything
life.
about
Not a fish guy. I like steak. I like cows.
Me too.
Cows are good. I like
Fish
them
is
moving.
better, though.
I like when
Fish
I
is
think they're
better.
fun animals and they're funny to look at. They're fun to hang around.
Do not eat
And I
fish.
think they're great to eat. I will eat fish on Friday night because it is a mitzvah al pi Torah,
But
given
you
by the
won't eat it-
rabbis.
you won't eat it.
Because back in the day, and I told you this, I told you guys on Friday night. I won't eat it. I believe no. Why would I eat fish?
Why not?
It's gross.
Good.
What do you eat?
What do you eat?
Like meaning like if I was like married and my wife was like,
Don't you cook
try this
fish?
fish.
You know,
Huh?
okay.
Like, don't you cook the fish for Shabbos sometimes?
Yeah, for you guys.
I'll-
I cook great fish because
I'll-
so when I was in
Yeah, so
Yeshiva.
don't you like try when you're eating it?
On Shabbos day I'll eat it because it's a mitzvah, but I'm not really like
What if-
salmon.
what
I
if-
like
I think
sometimes.
it's gross, even though you're serving.
No,
it
I
to
wouldn't think
all
it's
of
gross.
us.
In other words, like, no, yeah, it's kind of gross. Fish it's too fishy.
But you serve it to all of us.
Make it unfishy.
No. I make good fish relative to other people's
Oh.
fish. I just mean I don't like fish.
Oh, yeah,
like
but-
I'll
But you
make
like your fish.
more than other people's fish, but not enough that I would eat it. Like I wouldn't make it for myself.
Okay.
No, you've never had my fish. I never cooked the fish here.
I
That's
thought
never
you
me.
cooked the fish here.
No, all the food you
No, I
that's the
have,
rest.
I have.
Oh,
No,
you
It's
cook
amazing.
I do a
I
teriyaki.
think fed my fish.
I used to cook the fish here. I used to do teriyaki salmon. All right, I'm on video, so I'm gonna give you the secret of the teriyaki salmon. You ready? It's actually it's a fish
Is
secret.
it gluten free?
It can.
Shut up.
If you get teriyaki,
Make bread, boy.
no, it can be. Get gluten-free soy sauce and gluten-free teriyaki sauce. Very simple. You ready? A lot of people do teriyaki salmon. It's not a hard thing to do. It's just about the
It's easy,
temperature.
yeah.
But here's what you do. Here's the trick, the Moshe trick. Before you put the teriyaki on, put the soy sauce on there and let it sit for like an hour. Even really 15 minutes if
You
you're
mean
not a
in a
big soy
bag, in a
person.
bag, right?
Like with the fish, with no teriyaki,
In a bag,
just
right?
soy. You don't have you put it in a tray and put a bunch of soy sauce on it. It's fine too. But you can put it in a bag because the soy, also with meat, it's a good thing to do.
It's also salty.
The salt, it like splits it up. It like softens the meat, but also that you get that soy flavor inside the salmon. Then you coat the or really, what you could do is you bake it just like that with just soy, and then put the teriyaki on after it's warm.
Put some honey on there.
Not if you get proper teriyaki, you don't even eat. But bake it on 225. First, you could smack it at 450 for like 4 minutes, and let it crisp up a little, and then put it at 225 for like an hour and a half. You know, like not literally smack it. Like you cook it real hot for like 5 minutes to crisp it up a little, and then but cook it at a very low temperature for like an hour, 225, 250.
For 4
delicious.
minutes.
But I don't like fish. Like I like that better than
Okay,
other
Are
stuff.
you putting anything else on it besides the teriyaki?
And then the other way I do it is I'll do lemon juice, and if I don't do that way, because you're supposed to do one sweet, one sour. So the other one I do, you can do with orange too,
Have you
but I'll
done
just
dill?
do tons of lemon juice on it,
What about lime?
What about
and
dill?
then I'll sometimes put like oranges on there and a little lime juice if you want. But no, just
No
lemon,
dill?
just lemon by itself. That's like my favorite type of salmon actually. I'm not even whatever. But
So you
orange-
like that salmon?
It's a,
I'm saying I'll take 2 bites. I'll be like it tastes
It's
good,
just-
but
it
I can never
sounded-
eat a meal of it. I wouldn't. I
Why?
can't get full of it. It's
okay,
gross.
what if I
Fish
make
is
you?
gross.
What if I make you salmon?
No,
Salmon
I wouldn't
dish.
eat it. It's
Come
gross.
on, I spent time and effort into making.
When I was in Israel and
What if it's on
Yeshiva,
Shabbat?
Yes.
Now
when
you
I was
have
in,
to.
now you have to eat it.
I
yes.
lost 30 pounds in my first like 45 days in Yeshiva. Not on
Because
purpose.
of all fish.
No, about 3 months. Not on purpose. I grew
all
up.
my
I
fish.
grew up eating McDonald's, sports bar food, Philly cheesesteaks. You know, double cheese. It's all you don't eat. I eat burgers.
good,
What do you think I
that's
eat every night? I eat fried chicken every night. I prep fried chicken. I have little bags of pre-prepped chicken tenders.
That's so
That's what
smart.
takes my. I put them in the freezer every. I take one out 4 hours before I eat. And I make fried.
That's so
I mean,
smart.
granted, even now I'm a little like sick of fried chicken. Well, what I've been doing now is I cut up the fried chicken and I
Take
do
some hot
nachos.
sauce.
I do
Take some
chicken
hot
nachos.
sauce.
Make
Some.
fried
I have 12 hot
salmon.
sauces in my
What
fridge.
kind of sauce? What's your favorite?
I have 3 different buffalo sauces right now. I have 4 different salsas. I got a crazy hot sauce for Park Sham. I need to, otherwise how am I
buffalo
going to eat?
sauce?
So there's a Carolina buffalo sauce, OU, delicious. They have it at Publix. That's very good. I just found. I found this Mexican, it's like a very small bottle, very very spicy salsa, also OU. So I use that sometimes, but it's very expensive, so you can't go through it. So I buy the Chipotle Tabasco sauce.
Oh, that one's good.
It's like a $6
That
bottle
one's-
hot sauce.
that
I go
one's
through it
good.
in 3
That one's
days.
very good.
So I gotta be careful with those. I bought 3 of them like 2 months ago, and I'm almost on my 3rd one. So it's like I get the nachos whichever chips are on sale, and you can warm up in the oven a little bit. Make some fried chicken. You cut them up, put a little sauce on there, and some guacamole, and you get some chicken nachos.
Guacamole.
No guacamole.
Guacamole.
Yeah.
Because I've only seen the Cornish hens that are kosher here, but where do you get?
I cook my own chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Where
cook
do
my
you
own
get
chicken.
chicken?
Oh, I mean, I get a giant thing of frozen chicken.
Where?
And defrost and
Where?
chicken.
Yeah.
All chickens are kosher.
What?
Frozen, non-cooked chicken.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wait, what do you mean?
I mean, if it's slaughtered by a Jew,
Oh,
no,
okay.
I don't get it from the Publix.
Oh, okay. I was
Sorry,
thinking
yeah.
about to
I
say.
don't.
Sorry, all chickens are kosher.
Where do you get
I
it?
thought you
Where-
were like me asking like chicken's not kosher. Yeah,
Where do you get it from though?
chicken's kosher animal. Chabad, meaning they order a Chabad's worth, and I take like a normal person, like I take a bag or whatever.
Where you
Right.
can get.
Yeah, where
That's
she-
like
yeah.
From Miami, really, we get from Miami. Oh, you're asking? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we just no with the Chabad house. We have, if you go on the website, they have on the website like a list of food items that basically what the butcher offers in Miami,
Okay.
and they send a truck, boxes, cases. I was so confused. I'm so sorry. I was like,
That's what
chicken?
I think we were asking.
kosher?
Yeah.
I got
I was
confused.
like, I didn't
Oh,
know
I-
chicken at Publix
Is
is
there-
kosher.
No. Publix has the
Cornish
sauces. I found
hens.
I found a Chipotle mayo. Okay,
Ah.
found 2 of them, but one of them's $8 a bottle.
Mayo's not
And
considered.
I bought it when it was on sale for 50 cents off, which I knew I should have done it because I knew it was going to happen. I'm going to like this one too much. I'm not going to like the $4 one. And then I'm going to buy the $4 one. I'm not even going to like it that much. I'm not going to want it. I'm going to want the $8 one. And I should have just never done that and started with the $4 one. And even though the $8 was on sale, and I was still would have liked the $4 one, and I did that, and now I have the $4 one full in my fridge, and I had to buy another $8 one because I don't like the $4 one.
Mayo's not considered like dairy, right? I don't think so.
Mayo's egg.
With
But a lot of them are made in like dairy-ish.
Some people
You ever watch
think.
Breaking Bad?
I know, yeah, I have, but some people consider it dairy.
No, growing up, I always thought first of all, who knows that mayo is egg?
I know.
No one knows that until you tell them.
I really just found that out.
Right,
Like,
I found that out like 2 years ago. I'm 29. I'm gonna be 29
Like,
soon.
I was just watching
No,
YouTube.
I found it out at like
I
27
was like,
years old.
no way.
Right, 100%. I didn't know
Breaking
that.
Bad.
I never grew up eating mayo. I never liked mayo until recently,
it's
and only
good, though.
spicy
You
mayo.
Put it
Like
with
mayo,
some tuna
plain mayo, I
fish.
think
Put it with
gross.
some.
I love
Okay.
I like
Is
tuna.
there a difference? Like, can
This I feel like is the real essence of the class.
Alright,
I
can-
feel like everything else is just a build up. Now we're really getting
can
to
you or can Rabbi or Chris, like, if I bring him like a chicken, can he bless it? And then that's because doesn't it have to get like?
It's about the way it's killed.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Chicken.
Can he
Bless
kill
it.
it? And, can he kill it and then like?
He's not a sheikh, I'm not a sheikh.
Okay.
We had a friend here who was a sheikh.
That's what I was
My friend,
asking.
I want to
That's what I
become a
was
sheikh.
You
Okay.
want
Not-
to kill the animals?
I want to learn how to do it correctly. So that heaven forbid.
You
World
do
War
that
III
and bring
comes
it.
in.
You do it for
Heaven
me
forbid
every
World
single
War
day.
III comes and the Chinese invade.
Please.
You're gonna have one sheikh. One guy to get kosher meat from. I got the. No. That's
call
not
yourself
why.
fast.
That's not why. Because the truth is, when I was becoming a rabbi, a dear friend was becoming a sheikh at the same time, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I wanted to do it. So I've had this plan for years, but I've also slowly been developing a paranoia that we're gonna get invaded by China. So they coincide. But the idea was its own idea. I wanted to become a sheikh. It's a very holy thing. Sheikhet, I want to learn how to lane. Whatever. We all should, with God's help, be blessed to learn as much Torah and be able to do as many mitzvahs as possible.
Okay.
Sheikhet, it's a nice one. First of all, great backup job. Okay? No one wants to be a sheikhet. People get paid nice amount of money. So my friend, so it's a popular thing for new young sheikhim who are unmarried, some even who are married, but you go to a place like Ukraine or Russia or whatever, where Jewish communities, because of Chabad, are like sprouting up everywhere, and more and more kosher food is needed, and all the sheikhim, all the professional Jewish anything rabbis, were all killed or left or etc. Over hundreds. The last 20th century was terrible for Jewish people in Eastern Europe. So there are a lot of people who live in Israel who will go now to Ukraine for 2-3 months out of the year, and they do like a whole year's worth of work for them basically in like 3 months. They get paid like $80,000 in like 2-3 months worth of work, and they go home. So as a meat slaughterer, pretty good. So it's a backup, man.
You know, it's the most.
In case the rabbi thing doesn't work out. I'm just kidding.
The job with the highest rate of domestic violence.
Sheikhim?
Well,
Ritual slaughterers?
working
No,
at-
shame.
No, working at a
Prison? I think it's. I thought it was. I read somewhere it's like.
police.
I thought it was female prison guards are like the most violent people in America.
Huh.
So I read something about this. Like the most violent person. Like I don't know if this is,
I didn't
but like so to
think
speak, like personality wise, is a female prison guard, which almost makes sense. That's a tough job. Like you
Yeah.
gotta be. In other words, like prisoners are bad enough. Females who are naturally not seemingly prisoners, so the ones who did become prisoners, probably like really like hardcore. So to be a female prison guard, pretty hardcore. Yeah, it's like when you meet a female Marine who's like actually a Marine. It's like that's actually insanely impressive. Like, because you don't want to mess with that person. Like that's yeah.
I forgot exactly what I was going to say.
So I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So most vegetables, or all of them, are kosher?
So you have to check, right, for bugs and things like this.
Okay.
But in general, yes, you don't need any kosher certification, right? The problem is if they're cut. I mean, not really, right? So in general, it's not a problem, especially for a vegetable, unless it's a spicy vegetable. And it depends what custom you come from. Like if you're a Sephardi or if you're Ashkenaz. If you're a Sephardi person, so something like garlic, pre-cut garlic, is going to be an issue. Because even a dull knife, maybe if it's an unkosher, if you're an Ashkenazi person, it's probably, I mean, it can still be an issue, but probably lesser. So there's certain things that pre-cut lettuce for sure is going to be fine, as long as it's washed. Like the fact that it was cut wouldn't make a difference. But spicy foods that cut, so the unkosher and the knife, come into the food. So, but in general, vegetables, as long as they're not cut, yeah, it's going to be kosher. There's a lot of things you'll see unnecessary kosher. I mean, toilet paper, you see kosher symbols on it. It's insanity. There's nothing like it's not kosher. There's kosher as a concept for food. It's also a word we use regarding, it means fits, kosher. So we also say that, like, in other words, we say it kind of as like a play on words, but it's not a play on words. When I say like that was a kosher essay that you did, meaning it was like a good essay, that's not actually just a play on words. It means literally it's a fifth essay. It was proper. It'd be like saying it's proper. So kosher in general references food. It also means to be proper. Why did I mention that though? What was the original question? Sorry.
Vegetables.
Right, but then follow it up with.
The garlic.
No, I got that. Well, just after.
So listen, as a side thing, I'm becoming a plant-based chef.
Okay.
I mean, I cook a lot anyway, and so I was just.
So all right. The things that have textures that don't need one.
Yeah.
So soap, for example. Soap is called pogum. It's called disgusting. So if something unkosher falls into my food, in general, I'm going to need 60 times more of the kosher than the unkosher if I can't see the unkosher. If I see the unkosher thing, so remove it, obviously. If I don't see it, it got lost, so I'm going to need 60 times more kosher than unkosher in general, and that it will nullify the unkosher. I'm not going to taste the unkosher. I won't notice it's there, so now I'm allowed to eat it, and this whole thing's still going to be called kosher. What about something like soap? Soap is disgusting. It doesn't add benefit to my food. So unkosher has to add benefit. If it only takes away and removes benefit, it actually makes my food worse. So it doesn't matter now. I can eat the food. It's still going to be called kosher. It has to enhance the benefit. So something like soap that's disgusting, that by definition is not food. And if it falls into my soup, as long as you still are not disgusted by it, you're allowed to eat the soup. It's not called treif. It's not called unkosher. So when if you go to a store, you'll see soap has OU on it sometimes. Like that's literally the definition. That's I'm upset at OU. Like that's almost false advertising. You're making in other words, that's like. Besides, and it gives a false understanding of what kosher is for people. In other words, they're not even necessarily trying to be harmful. Heaven forbid. It's a nice it's kosher. Why not buy this one instead of that one if you're a Jew? I guess. But also on the other hand, now Jews heaven forbid will get confused and think there's a thing called kosher for something like soap. If soap falls in any food in any circumstance. Bright should all, it's no problem. It'll never be an issue. Okay? Oh, yeah. Okay, everybody? Any more questions? Nothing about the soaps? Thank you guys so much for a wonderful class. And with God's help, we will see you all next week.
Oh, hi.